$200 million. That's what his rise cost. That's what my nights of negotiations were worth. My years turned into signatures and contracts. I brought him into this company. I opened doors for him. I covered his mistakes. I pushed him forward while he learned to walk the carpeted corridors. I told everyone, give my nephew a chance, he won't let you down. And now he stood before the board in an expensive suit, looking at me as if I didn't exist. His voice was icy. Every word landed like a cut. You were never a leader, Judy. You were a convenient step. A tool that outlived its usefulness. A step. That's what he called me. In front of 12 directors and a CEO who barely looked up from his notes. He claimed my deals, my projects, my contacts as if they were his birthright. And the board applauded like it was a coronation. My name is Judith Kane. 58. Compliance Director. Survivor. For 30 years, I made sure this company never collapsed under its own lies. Contracts, audits, renewal clauses, I lived in the fine print everyone else ignored. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't the loudest voice in the room. But every deal worth more than 10 million had my fingerprints on it. I built the guardrails. And today my own nephew used them to push me into the ditch. Jason Miller. 33, slick haircut, expensive watch, smile trained for magazine covers. My sister's boy. I pulled him into this building when no one else would give him a shot. He was supposed to learn the ropes. Instead, he tied one around my neck. At the head of the table sat Daniel Rhodes, CEO. Smooth, controlled, polished. His reputation was built on letting others do the dirty work while he stayed clean. Today was no different. He didn't raise his voice or throw accusations. He just watched Jason talk and nodded like a priest blessing a ritual. Next to him, Marla Quinn, Vice President of Finance. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. She'd been circling my department for years, waiting for a crack. Jason gave her one. She didn't clap loudly, but her small smile said enough. She'd already picked her side. By the glass door, Naomi Briggs from HR. Clipboard balanced against her hip, an envelope with my name sticking out just far enough for me to notice. She didn't look at me, didn't have to. She was here to make it official. That was the lineup. Jason preening like a king. Rhodes blessing the betrayal. Marla calculating her share. Naomi, ready to push the paperwork. And me, seated with my hands folded on the table, watching the performance. When Jason finished his speech, the applause was automatic. Not everyone clapped with conviction, but enough did to fill the room with the sound of surrender. Rhodes cleared his throat, leaned forward, and read from a sheet of paper. Effective immediately, Judith Kane will be relieved of her duties as compliance director, pending a review of recent irregularities. His tone was flat, the kind of voice you use to read out stock prices. Irregularities, Jason echoed, looking directly at me. It's time for fresh leadership. The room didn't argue. No one raised a question. No one defended me. 30 years of service erased in a minute. Naomi stepped forward, sliding the envelope across the table. Mrs. Kane, your separation documents are prepared. You'll receive digital copies via email. Please collect your personal items and return your badge before leaving the premises. Her voice was professional, but her eyes flicked downward, avoiding mine. I didn't move. I didn't protest. I just took in the details, the misplaced appendix in Jason's deck, the timestamp on the minutes that didn't align with the actual meeting schedule, the signature page with a font mismatch. Tiny cracks invisible to everyone else. To me, they screamed louder than his speech. Security waited by the door. Not hostile, just procedure. They didn't touch me, didn't need to. I stood, picked up the envelope and walked out past the glass walls. Behind me, the applause faded into murmurs, the kind you hear at funerals. In the corridor, younger staff looked away as I passed. The ones I trained whispered to each other, faces pale. One junior analyst muttered, "Sorry, Judy." Sorry, like it was an accident, like betrayal was a spilled coffee on the breakroom floor. My office was already stripped of dignity. A cardboard box sat on my desk, filled with a photo of my sister, 2 notebooks, and a pen I'd bought in Tokyo on my first overseas deal. That's all they left. Owen from facilities lingered by the server room door with his toolkit. He didn't say anything, just nodded once. I nodded back. A silent reminder that not everyone forgets. Downstairs, I handed over my badge. The scanner beeped one last time. The guard avoided my eyes. End of an era, he muttered. I stepped out into the lobby, box in my arms, the city visible through the tall glass doors. Jason's laughter drifted faintly from above, echoing down the atrium. He'd already won in his mind. He had 200 million in contracts and the board's applause at his back. But I had something he didn't. 30 years of memory. 30 years of knowing exactly where the bodies weren't buried, but where the documents were. And while he celebrated his first victory, I was already planning mine. The elevator hummed like a machine that knew my fate before I did. 30 floors down with a cardboard box in my arms and security shadowing me at a polite distance. The doors slid open to the lobby's glass and marble. The receptionist, Aaron, the kid who once begged me to sign off his vacation, pretended to read a memo upside down. No eye contact. That was the tell. At the revolving doors I caught my reflection. Neat blazer, tired eyes, a life reduced to a photo and 2 notebooks. Above me on the mezzanine, Jason leaned on the rail with Marla Quinn. He wasn't smiling for me, he was smiling for his phone. The angle, the lighting, the pose that says, I won. Marla nodded once, the kind of nod you give a bet that just paid out. I pushed through the doors without looking back. Outside, the city didn't care. Taxis cut lanes. A courier shouted into a headset. For everyone else it was Tuesday. For me it was the moment after the trap springs and before the pain registers. I crossed to the garage, slid into my car, and let the silence settle. Not grief. Not yet. Inventory. At my kitchen table I unpacked the box. The framed photo of my sister. Jason in a graduation cap, grinning like the world owed him interest. I set it face down. The notebooks fell open where they wanted, pages creased from years of use. Clause 14. 7 stared up at me in my own handwriting. I could hear the old argument with legal, keep it in, keep it clean, make it automatic. They called it overcautious. Called it insurance. I powered up my laptop. HR's email was already waiting. Separation agreement, non-disclosure, final paycheck schedule. The corporate tone was perfect. Gentle verbs, tidy lines, nothing personal. I didn't open the attachments. I tagged the email, archived it, and moved on. The real work started with small inconsistencies that don't survive daylight. The board minutes filed before the meeting began. Jason's deck missing the appendix I'd compiled line by line. A signature page that looked right until you compared the text to the original, same words, different bones. Alone, any one of those could be a harmless error. Together they smelled like hurry. I called Aiden Cole. He picked up on the second ring. Kane, he said. No hello. Lawyers only use first names when they're selling you something. I need an off-the-record consult, I said. How much trouble? 200 million. Silence then. Email me tonight. I ended the call and scrolled my contacts. Owen from facilities was buried deep in the list, filed under a nickname only I used. I sent 3 words, check spool Q. He would understand. Print servers don't gossip, but they remember. If board packets autospool to the backup device like they always had, the originals were still ghosting in there, quietly proving what changed and when. I poured water, not whiskey. Clean head, clean moves. Then I opened my personal calendar archive. Not the meetings themselves, the metadata. Times, durations, invites sent and revoked. Jason had slid a few events around in the past month, pushing reviews forward, pulling rehearsals back. On screen, the pattern looked like a hand smoothing wet cement before it set. I took screenshots, labeled them with neutral names, saved them where they belonged. My phone buzzed. HR again, this time a friendly reminder to sign quickly for seamless processing. I ignored it. They wanted me quiet before their story hardened. My signature would make their timeline feel official. Not today. Another buzz. A single word from Owen seen. No promises, no details, just a heartbeat from the server room. Good. That meant the backup hadn't been scrubbed yet. I drafted a short email to myself, subject line preservation notice, personal, and wrote the bare minimum underneath. Dates of meetings, references to public announcements, and a note that a third-party verification clause may be implicated. I wasn't sending it to the company. I was timestamping my own awareness. If anyone accused me of retrofitting a case, I wanted a clean dated breadcrumb. Then I wrote to Priya Shah, an external auditor I trusted because she enjoyed neat problems more than office politics. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I asked for a neutral read on a hypothetical. If reported performance and preserved records diverged on a 9-figure renewal, what would trigger verification? I attached nothing. I named no names. I referenced clause 14. 7 and hit send. The apartment felt too quiet, so I cracked the window. Sirens in the distance, a bus sighing at a stop, someone arguing 2 blocks over about a delivery fee. I glanced at the photo I'd flipped face down and turned it back upright. My sister would have said I was being dramatic. She would have told me to forgive him. She wasn't here to watch him turn my work into his costume. I picked up a pen and wrote out the next steps in a single line across the top of a legal pad. Preserve, verify, escalate. No sub-bullets. No flourishes. Just the route through a maze I had designed years before. The clock on the oven ticked past 10. I packaged the screenshots in my notes for Aiden, zipped the file, and wrote the cover email in 3 sentences. The dates that mattered, the clause that mattered, and what I wanted, an opinion on initiating verification without tripping any traps. I read it once, deleted a 4th sentence that sounded like anger, and pressed send. Before shutting down, I opened the company news page. Jason's face filled the screen, backlit by the boardroom's glass. The caption was clean PR. Leadership drives record efficiencies. Renewal positions the firm for growth. I stared at the photo until I noticed it. His tie was crooked by a fraction, the kind of fraction only shows after you rush a knot. I clicked the tab closed. Little tells. I shut the laptop and sat still. The plan wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. Timers were already running, on server queues, on audit notices, on nervous lenders who hate surprises more than anything. I didn't need revenge speeches. I needed compliance steps executed on time. My phone vibrated one last time before midnight. Aiden, got it. Call 8 a.m. Below that, a second message from a number not in my contacts. We should talk. It's about Jason. No name, no context, just hunger between the words. I placed the phone face down and stared at the ceiling until the room blurred. Tomorrow I'd start the calls. Tonight I memorized the feeling of walking out with a box and a silent lobby. Not to dwell on it. To measure it. So when the wheel turned, I'd know the exact point where the noise began. I woke before 6. No badge. No calendar. Just the kitchen table, a legal pad, and clause 14. 7 staring at me from last night's notes. The plan had 3 steps. I didn't write them again. I didn't need to. At 8 on the dot, Aiden called. Tell me what survives discovery, he said. Board minutes filed early. Deck missing an appendix. Signature page altered. You can swear to that? Yes. Then we move, he said. I'll serve a preservation notice that cites the master agreement. No accusations, only obligations. You say nothing publicly. You don't vent. We let their clocks run. Do it. I'll need 1 anchor, he added. Anything external. Jason's press claim. 200 million. Time-stamped. That'll do. I hung up and opened my calendar archive. Not the meetings, the metadata. Invitations sent, rescinded, moved. I watched the pattern appear. Reviews pulled forward by a day. A rehearsal slipped in late. It looked like someone paving over tracks before the cement set. I screen captured the sequence and filed it under a neutral tag. If anyone ever asked, I'd say what was true. The records matched themselves. At 9:12, Owen's text landed. Spool queue still has last Friday's packets. Originals present. He didn't send me files. He didn't have to. The point wasn't to hoard documents. It was to prove the originals existed. Somewhere the company controlled. That was enough to trigger verification. I emailed Priya Shah a single paragraph. I referenced a hypothetical renewal over $100 million, the possibility of divergent reports, and the clause number. No names. No drama. I asked for a neutral reading. What initiates independent verification? Her reply came 20 minutes later. If a party identifies discrepancies and requests verification under the clause, it's mandatory. Timelines begin upon notice. Clean. Useful. Loaded. At noon, Jason's face filled my phone. He'd posted a photo from the mezzanine. Him and Marla Quinn, polished smiles, the caption bragging about the $200 million secured. People were already congratulating him. I saved the post with the platform's native tool. Not because I needed a souvenir. Because timestamps don't argue. I drafted my message to the building. A simple visitor log request for last week's Innovation Summit. The meeting, Jason said, had clinched the deal. The property manager owed me a favor. I'd pushed through a service contract for them when our lease renewal stalled. I didn't mention Jason. I asked for room bookings between 6 p.m. and 10. If the space was logged as maintenance during the alleged summit, that contradiction would do more work than any speech I could give. Aiden's email dropped at 1:03. The preservation notice was short and surgical. It cited the contract, listed categories to retain, board packets, approval routes, access logs, and reminded the company of penalties for spoliation. No threats. Just leverage written in polite sentences. He'd CC'd Priya's firm, not for show, but to ensure a third party saw the date the clock started. I read it once and felt my shoulders loosen by a fraction. Not triumph. Alignment. At 2:10 Naomi from HR called. Judy, have you had a chance to sign the separation packet? I'm reviewing. Rapid signature helps with processing, she said, sweet as a memo. I won't delay anything that's accurate, I said. A pause. We'd appreciate discretion. So would I. I ended the call. By late afternoon, the property manager replied. The so-called summit room had been booked as electrical during the hour Jason bragged about the handshake. Another line in the ledger. I stood stretched and looked at the photo of my sister. Jason's cap sat crooked on his head, same way his tie had been crooked in the press shot. Always rushing the knot. Always assuming no one noticed. 5. I called Aiden again. We have enough to trigger? I asked. Yes, he said. Tomorrow morning. We deliver the verification request to Priya and copy the company. Then we wait. For what? For gravity, he said. It always wins. I placed the phone on the table and traced the edge of the legal pad with my thumb. No speeches. No threats. Just a clause I wrote years ago, finally earning its keep. The preservation notice was already in play, which meant every document, every packet, every log was locked. If they tried to edit or erase, it would show. That alone was enough to put tension under their polished smiles. Jason didn't slow down. The company's news page quoted him again, bragging that the $200 million renewal proved the firm's resilience. He was building his own trap one sentence at a time. I saved the article. His words would weigh more than anything I could say. Owen called from a stairwell. He checked the print servers. Originals and amended sets were both there, and the logs matched. He didn't send me files, just confirmed their existence. That was enough. If the originals lived, Jason's version would never hold. Priya's message followed. Independent verification was mandatory now. Her language was exact. Scope included board packets, approvals, access logs. The fuse was lit, and it couldn't be smothered. Jason kept posing for cameras, shaking hands with Marla in the cafeteria as if billion-dollar clients were won over paper cups of coffee. I archived the photo. Applause could be faked. Timestamps could not. The property manager finally replied with the official booking ledger. The so-called Innovation Summit, Jason claimed, had sealed the renewal, logged as maintenance. No clients. No executives. Just janitors changing bulbs. I sent the file to Aiden with 2 words. Confirm receipt. Then Naomi called again, pushing me to sign the separation packet. Her tone was careful, but the message was obvious. They wanted me gone, quiet and fast. I told her discretion only mattered if the record was accurate, then ended the call. Piece by piece the picture was forming. Jason's empire was smoke. My job wasn't to shout or accuse. It was to open a window and let everyone see what he'd built. Clause 14. 7 was already doing the heavy lifting. All I had to do was wait. Printers are terrible at keeping secrets. They remember every packet, every draft, every slide that passes through their queues. Most people ignore that. I never did. Owen met me outside the service hallway, a place where the walls always smelled faintly of toner and dust. He didn't hand me anything. He wasn't reckless, but his face said enough. The machine had kept Jason's work. Originals and edits. Both stamped, both stored. Still there. I asked. Still there, he said. No purge. Logs intact. Good. He glanced toward the cameras in the ceiling. You didn't hear this from me. Then he walked away with his empty cart. I didn't need the files in my hands. Just knowing they existed was enough. The preservation notice meant they were now evidence frozen in time. Jason's amended packet could never erase the one I'd prepared. Back at my apartment, I wrote it down in my notebook. Printer confirmed. Originals preserved. No copies, no screenshots. Words were safer than data for now. Jason thought board applause and photo ops built stability. But every printer, every server, every ledger had a memory. And memories don't clap. They record. I didn't need the number on the page. I needed what it did. Years ago I wrote a single line into the renewal language that said, in plain English, if the story on paper doesn't match the records we keep, an outside party checks everything. No debates, no delays. It sat there for years like an unused exit. Jason never noticed it. Most people don't read the exits when the room feels safe. I called Priya. No small talk. If originals contradict the deck Jason presented, what follows? Independent verification, she said. Mandatory. We collect the source packets, approval routes, door logs, calendar traces, vendor acknowledgements. We compare sequence and content. If amends exist, we map when they appeared. And leadership can stall? Not without advertising it, she said. Once the request is filed, clocks start. Anyone touching a file leaves footprints. Then file it, I said. I rang Aiden next. Make it clean. No adjectives, only obligations. He understood. An hour later he sent a draft that fit on a page. Notice served to the company, Priya copied, lenders included as interested parties. The wording was polite to the point of boredom, which is exactly how real pressure looks. I didn't attach evidence to my emails. I didn't send screenshots. I wrote 2 factual lines to Aiden about conflicting timelines and a vanished appendix and left it there. If they wanted more, the auditor would ask the company for it. Let them hand over their own rope. Naomi called again about my separation packet. I told her I'd sign when I finished reading. She reminded me of mutual respect. I reminded her of accuracy. She hung up first. In the afternoon I walked past our building and watched employees badge in, heads down, routine intact. Somewhere above me sat Jason in a fresh office chair, rehearsing interviews, telling himself the story would hold. He didn't know the request was already en route, that the room he'd made for himself had a door he couldn't see and I had just opened it. Back home I wrote 3 words across the top of a fresh page. Someone is watching. Not me. Not this time. That was the point. I'd spent my career being the person who kept things straight inside the house. Today I handed the house to someone who measures straight with a ruler. Not a smile. Aiden picked the cafe, not me. Downtown, noisy enough to drown stray ears, expensive enough to keep interns away. He was already seated when I arrived, tie loosened, eyes sharp. Judy, he said, standing just enough to be polite. You look steady. I am, I said. They're the ones shaking. They just don't know it yet. He ordered black coffee, no sugar. I didn't bother with food. Tell me what you want, he said. Not revenge, I answered. Verification. Exposure. Let them explain their own lies. That's manageable. The contract language gives us teeth. Once Priya files her request, your former employer is obligated to provide records. Emails, packet versions, badge entries, even vendor approvals. If they stonewall, we notify lenders. Lenders panic faster than boards. And Jason. He becomes collateral. His name's on the packets. His signature rides the amendments. If they're false, he sinks first. I leaned forward. What do you need from me? Discipline. No leaks, no press calls, no social media. They'll bait you with silence, try to make you flinch. Don't. Our leverage is process, not noise. You think I can't keep quiet? I think most people want to scream when they're betrayed. I need you not to. The waiter dropped the bill before the cups were empty. Aiden slid cash onto the tray and pushed his chair back. You built the railings. Now you watch someone else walk them. Don't interfere. Just wait. Outside, the city moved at its usual pace, but I felt the rhythm shift. Jason was still playing to cameras inside the tower. I had just placed someone with a pen and a deadline outside his door. The shark had smelled blood, not mine, his. Jason didn't waste time. The company's intranet lit up with photos of him beside Marla Quinn, both smiling like they just discovered gravity. He called her his partner in innovation. She let him. Rhodes hovered in the background, hands folded, silent approval written all over his face. I watched from my laptop. Their story was neat. A young executive securing a massive renewal. A finance VP validating every line. No one outside that glass tower cared about the details. Headlines don't read footnotes. But footnotes are where bodies hide. Marla's financial deck went public in a lender's briefing. I compared it with Jason's internal packet. Dates didn't match. The milestone he bragged about in April was reported in March on her slides. Small shift, but enough to spark suspicion. If a lender asked why the timeline was rewritten, the company would have to invent an answer. And invented answers leave fingerprints. I printed both versions on my home desk and marked the mismatch in red ink. That sheet went into a folder labeled simply, leverage. Jason didn't know I was watching his every move. He thought applause meant safety. But every cheer he collected was another nail. Marla believed she had chosen the winning side. She didn't realize she had tied herself to a man who couldn't keep his own lies in order. The boardroom lights looked bright from outside. From where I sat, they looked like heat lamps over meat already starting to burn. The company's access logs were never meant for show, but they were always there, tucked into facilities records like dust behind a cabinet. I knew who to ask. Owen called late, his voice low like he was standing near an air vent. Your nephew was in records last week. After hours. Twice. He doesn't have clearance, I said. He does now. Temporary override. Someone upstairs approved it. That was enough to raise eyebrows in an audit. Access overrides are logged. If Jason stepped into records to swap packets, the timestamp would nail him harder than any accusation from me. I asked Owen to keep it quiet. Don't pull anything. Just confirm the logs stay intact. They will. The system keeps its own backups. Even roads can't wipe those without leaving smoke. The next day Naomi called again, this time with a sharper edge. Judith, the company expects cooperation. It would be best to finalize your paperwork quickly. I'll cooperate with anything accurate, I told her. You should make sure that's the standard. Her silence told me she understood more than she wanted to admit. By nightfall, Aiden confirmed the notice had reached the board. Priya now had authority to request whatever she needed. Originals, amended decks, batch logs, all of it. The company could try to stall, but every delay was evidence in itself. Jason thought he was in control. He wasn't. The door hinges had already creaked, and the keycards had already spoken. Vendors always know more than they say. They see invoices before the board does, and their accountants panic faster than ours. That's why I called Lila, rep for one of our biggest suppliers. Vendor number 13 in the contract index. She answered on the second ring. Judy? Didn't expect to hear from you. I'm not here to gossip, I said. I just want to know when your last invoice was approved. Pause. Then a sigh. Strangely fast. Last quarter approvals came through in 2 days. That never happens. Who signed off? Jason's team. Not yours. That was the crack. If vendor number 13's approvals had been pushed through without the usual checks, the payments might not align with real performance. In verification, that would glow like a flare. Later that night, I drafted a short note to their compliance office. Neutral language. Reference service levels, approval dates, contract terms. No names. No accusations. Just a reminder of their obligation to maintain audit-ready records. The next morning, Aiden forwarded me a response. Vendor number 13 had opened an internal review. Their legal team wanted to confirm all signatures and delivery logs. That wasn't loyalty, it was survival. Jason had been so eager to look efficient, he'd forgotten the vendors were bound by the same rules I wrote. He thought cutting corners made him look smart. All it did was give me allies. The request landed on their desks midweek. Aiden kept it tight. Priya's letterhead gave it teeth. And the CC to the lender made it radioactive. Everyone in the boardroom now knew the renewal wasn't just internal news. It was under external review, and the clock had already started. I didn't see their faces, but I could imagine the shift. Rhodes pretending to be calm while his legal team whispered about exposure. Marla Quinn lips tight, realizing her signature sat under Jason's deck. Jason himself probably smirking, probably telling himself it was a formality. None of them understood what an audit really does. It doesn't accuse, compares. And comparisons don't bend. By late afternoon, Aiden called. They want you in the room, he said. As what? Witness. Priya requested your name as the original compliance officer on several renewal drafts. They can't refuse without drawing more suspicion. So they think I'll sit there and relitigate my job? No. You'll sit there and answer questions factually. One sentence at a time. That's all. I agreed. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was gravity pulling the floorboards loose. The company's next move came fast. Naomi rang me again, her voice clipped. Judith, please confirm you'll keep discussions confidential. I always did, I said. That's why you're still standing. She didn't answer. That night I laid out every version of the renewal I'd ever touched. Hard copies, notes in the margins, drafts marked with initials. I didn't need to present them. I just needed to remember the order. The sequence that proved Jason's edits came later, after my original work was filed. The printer logs, Owen's confirmation, the property manager's ledger. They all lined up. Not accusations. Facts. Meanwhile, Jason pushed harder. Another internal memo credited him with streamlining vendor approvals. He even bragged about cutting turnaround times by 70%. It sounded impressive on paper, But anyone who's ever processed a 7-figure invoice knows shaving weeks off approvals is an efficiency. It's a red flag. Vendors don't move faster without pressure. And pressure leaves marks. The lender's office noticed too. Aiden forwarded me their inquiry. A simple line asking for clarification on approval timing. That one question was enough. If the company couldn't prove alignment between Jason's claims and the vendor's actual records, they risked breaching covenants. And lenders don't play games with covenants. I sat at my kitchen table, legal pad open, adding one more word to the list beneath: preserve, verify, escalate. The new word was simple: witness. They had stripped me of a title, but now they needed my memory, my handwriting, my boring insistence on detail. Jason could wear my work like a crown, but he couldn't erase who built it. And in that boardroom, for the first time since they marched me out, I wouldn't be the one under review. The board tried to control the damage by staging a review of their own. They called it a routine quality check. But inside the building it felt like sirens. Mid-level managers were yanked from projects and shoved into conference rooms. 2 were suspended outright. Sacrificial pawns meant to distract Priya from the real game. I knew both of them. Hardworking, careful people. They weren't guilty of anything except being convenient targets. The message was obvious. Look, we're cleaning house. But auditors don't buy theater. They buy records. Word reached me through Owen first. He called while pretending to adjust wiring near the lobby. They're shredding confidence, not paper, he said. People are scared. Good, I told him. Fear makes mistakes. Jason handled the panic with photo ops. He appeared in the cafeteria with Rhodes, giving pep talks about transparency and leadership through change. He didn't mention that 2 employees had been escorted out minutes earlier. He didn't mention the lender's inquiry sitting unanswered on Marla's desk. He smiled, shook hands, and posed for pictures while the building burned under his feet. Aiden sent me an update. The lender pressed harder today. They want access to the data room. Priya backed the request. That means documents flow by week's end. Originals, amendments, everything. That was the crack widening. If the lender opened the files and saw the same mismatches I had, the company wouldn't just face embarrassment, it would face penalties, maybe defaults. Jason thought applause would cover him. But banks don't clap. They calculate. Late that night, Naomi tried again. Her email was softer this time, almost pleading. Judith, signing the separation agreement now would be a gesture of goodwill. It could help us all move forward. I didn't respond. Goodwill was a currency they'd already spent. Instead, I prepared for the next step. Appearing in that boardroom, not as an outcast, but as the quiet witness who remembered every signature, every draft, every meeting they thought was forgotten. The fire drill wasn't my problem. It was theirs. And soon it wouldn't just be smoke. They'd be choking on the flames they lit themselves. The property manager's office sat in the corner of the lobby level, hidden behind frosted glass and a plaque nobody noticed. I walked in with a folder under my arm and a favor in my pocket. Judith Kane, the manager said, standing from his desk. His name was Carl, and I had pushed his lease renewal through 3 years ago when Rhodes tried to squeeze building costs. Carl hadn't forgotten. I need a record, I said. Room bookings for last Thursday night. 8th floor. He raised an eyebrow. Conference suites? Yes. 6 to 10 p.m. Carl tapped at his terminal. The printer on his shelf hummed and spat out a single page. He slid it across. Booked as electrical maintenance. No executive meetings logged. Nothing client-facing. Signed. I asked. By Rhodes's office, he confirmed. But the code is standard. They didn't even try to disguise it. I folded the page and slipped it into my folder. You never saw me. You were never here, he said, already turning back to his screen. Outside, the lobby hummed with the usual rhythm. Employees flashing badges, phones buzzing, voices low. Nobody noticed me leave with the paper that erased Jason's story. His so-called innovation summit was nothing more than janitors and electricians clocking overtime. Back at my apartment, I faxed the page to Aiden's office. No cover letter, no commentary. Just the record itself. A minute later my phone buzzed. Received. Perfect. Jason thought a staged meeting could anchor his lie. Now I had proof it never existed. The walls he built around his story weren't collapsing yet, but I had just kicked out the first beam. Aiden's draft landed in my inbox before sunrise. 1 page. No adjectives. No threats. Just requirements written in clean legal ink. It asked Priya, as independent auditor, to begin verification of the renewal. It referenced the contract language, cited discrepancies between board materials and archived records, and requested preservation of all related files, packets, approvals, access logs, vendor invoices. Rhodes, Marla, and Jason were copied. So were the lenders. I read it twice. Every sentence was a blade. By noon the reaction started. Naomi called, voice thin. Judith, this escalation, was it necessary? It was required, I said. You understand this creates tension with the board. They created it. I only confirmed it. She didn't argue. She just ended the call. That afternoon, Rhodes issued an internal memo. The company is cooperating fully with independent verification. We are confident in our records and processes. I almost laughed. Confidence isn't declared. It's demonstrated. If their records were as clean as he claimed, they wouldn't be scrambling this hard. Jason stayed visible. He sent a company-wide email about new efficiencies and record growth. But his sentences were shorter now, the tone less triumphant. He was performing for the staff, not the board. Performances don't survive audits. At dusk, Aiden called. They're rattled, he said. They know Priya doesn't bend. The lenders will watch her every word. This isn't a corporate squabble anymore. It's financial stability on trial. Good, I said. Next step is simple. Wait. Let their own documents bury them. I closed my folder and set the property manager's booking record on top. One sheet of paper signed and dated, already circling their defenses like a slow fire. The letter had left my hands. Now it was their turn to sweat. The first call came from a blocked number. A woman's voice, combat-edged. Mrs. Kane, this is Sarah Nolan with the Herald. Can you confirm the independent verification request tied to the $200 million renewal? I kept my tone flat. No comment. Refer to official filings. Is it true you raised the discrepancies? No comment. Off the record? Not a word. I hung up before she could press. Minutes later, the article went live. Headline: Verification triggered on major renewal. Sources cite conflicting records. The story didn't name me, but anyone who followed corporate filings knew who had drafted the original compliance framework. My inbox flooded with messages from former colleagues, most of them just 3 words. Is it true? Jason responded the only way he knew, by posting a smiling photo on the company intranet, claiming full transparency and complete confidence. The picture told a different story. His jaw was tight, his tie crooked, his eyes flicking off camera. Rhodes held a town hall that afternoon. He used words like routine and standard procedure. But the staff didn't look convinced. They'd seen too many security escorts in recent weeks to believe the crisis was routine. Aiden called me afterward. This is good. Public pressure speeds audits. They'll push Priya for fast answers, but she won't bend. And Jason? He's boxed in. Every word he says now is evidence if it doesn't match the record. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and reread the article twice. My name wasn't on the page, but my fingerprints were all over the story. I didn't need credit. I needed patience. Jason thought the press would fade. He didn't understand the appetite for a $200 million scandal. Reporters circle numbers like sharks circle blood. This was no longer an internal fight. The outside world had its teeth in him. The lenders arrived with briefcases and tight schedules. They weren't interested in speeches or photo ops. They wanted numbers, documents, and timelines. No smiles, no small talk, just demands. Priya coordinated the session. She asked the company to upload all renewal files into a secure data room. Originals, amendments, approval chains, vendor invoices. Rhodes tried to slow her down, citing internal workflows. But lenders don't tolerate delay. Within an hour, the upload started. That night, Aiden called me. I've seen enough to know they're nervous. The lenders found mismatches. What kind? Tables that don't reconcile. Amendments appearing weeks after originals. Signatures out of sequence. It's sloppy. Sloppy is survivable, I said. Not when money's on the line. They can't certify revenue if records are fractured. That puts the renewal in limbo. The next morning, I reviewed Priya's preliminary note. She had flagged 3 items. Milestone timing inconsistencies, vendor approvals pushed through outside policy, and unexplained after-hours access to records. Each point demanded explanation. Each one pointed at Jason's shortcuts. Inside the company, panic grew. Staff whispered in elevators. Rumors leaked into group chats. 2 mid-level finance managers were suddenly placed on administrative leave. Sacrificial diversions. But the lenders didn't care about pawns, they cared about accuracy. Jason didn't appear in the cafeteria anymore. His public updates stopped. For a man who lived on visibility, the silence said everything. By evening, Aiden called again. They're cornered. Priya will press them directly tomorrow. If they can't justify the edits, lenders will reserve their rights. That means immediate consequences. What kind of consequences? Funding freezes. Share drops. Leadership changes. I wrote one word in my notebook: collapse. Jason had chased a headline. Now the numbers he twisted were chasing him back. The summons came in the form of a polite email. Your presence is requested as a witness during tomorrow's verification session. Not optional, not a suggestion. Rhodes and his board had no choice. Priya had asked for me, and the lenders had backed her. The next morning I walked through the glass doors without a badge, escorted by a junior associate from Priya's firm. Staff in the lobby stared like I was a ghost. Jason avoided eye contact, lingering near Marla with a stack of papers clutched too tight. Inside the boardroom, the air was colder than the climate system could explain. Priya sat at the head of the table, laptop open, files stacked neatly. The lenders' reps were already present, pens poised. Rhodes leaned back in his chair, stiff smile hiding strain. Mrs. Kane, Priya said, nodding. Thank you for joining. I'd like to confirm a few facts. Her questions were direct. Did you prepare a draft renewal packet in March? Yes. Was that draft complete with appendices? Yes. Were the appendices present when you submitted it to records? They were. Priya compared timestamps on the originals with Jason's version. The discrepancies were obvious. Edits had been introduced weeks later, after lender-facing materials were already circulated. Jason shifted in his chair. There must be a mistake. Priya cut him off. The logs match the originals. The amendments do not. Silence fell. Even Rhodes didn't attempt to smooth it over. I didn't argue, didn't explain. I answered every question with a single line, nothing more. Facts, not commentary. The board watched me the way you watch a fuse burn. Quietly, helplessly, knowing the explosion is inevitable. When the session ended, Priya closed her laptop. We'll finalize findings within days, she said. Her tone was professional, but the weight was already clear. The numbers didn't lie, and the records weren't on Jason's side. As I left the room, Jason finally looked at me. His face wasn't anger or arrogance anymore. It was recognition, the first flicker that he understood the ground was gone beneath his feet. Vendors were the first to move. Vendor number 13, the same supplier Jason had fast-tracked, sent a formal letter to the lenders. Their compliance team refused to certify the accelerated approvals. They stated clearly. Signatures were pushed through outside agreed policy. That letter alone was enough to make the lenders lean forward. 2 more vendors followed. One flagged mismatched delivery dates. Another questioned the authenticity of internal approvals attached to Jason's deck. None of them were accusing outright. They didn't need to. They were protecting themselves. Every line they wrote tightened the noose around him. Marla tried to contain it. She circulated a memo calling the discrepancies administrative oversights. The lenders weren't impressed. Oversights don't move millions of dollars across books. Oversights don't change timestamps or swap signature pages. By the next board session, Rhodes's patience cracked. He kept his voice even, but his words were knives. Jason, your work is under direct challenge. We can't shield you if the lenders pull support. Jason pushed back louder than he should have. These are procedural details. The renewal stands. I secured it. No, Rhodes said. The documents don't secure it. And the documents don't support you. The silence after that was heavier than any applause Jason ever got. From my seat against the wall, I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The flip had begun. Jason wasn't the golden boy anymore. He was the liability. And in a boardroom full of survivors, liabilities don't last. The collapse didn't arrive with shouting or drama. It came with silence, the kind that follows a verdict everyone already knows. Priya's final report was short. Originals confirmed. Amendments inconsistent. Vendor records contradicted Jason's claims. Verification complete. The renewal was compromised. The lenders moved first. They froze disbursements tied to the deal until the company could prove compliance. That freeze was lethal. Payroll, operations, even Rhodes's expansion plans. Suddenly everything depended on explaining Jason's edits. The board convened in closed session. Jason wasn't invited. Neither was I. But word travels fast in hallways. And by the end of the day, everyone knew the outcome. Jason was stripped of his title. His resignation was framed as voluntary, effective immediately. Marla issued a statement to staff, thanking him for his service during a critical period. Nobody believed it. By the time the email landed, his nameplate was already off the door. I watched it unfold from my apartment. No celebrations, no champagne. Just the news that the nephew I had lifted into the building had finally been dropped by the same hands that once applauded him. Rhodes didn't call me. He wouldn't. But Aiden did. "It's done," he said. "Not for me," I answered. "For me, it's balance restored." Jason had turned my work into a ladder. He thought climbing over me made him untouchable. Now he knew what the fall felt like. Jason's fall didn't echo, it thudded. One day he was plastered across the intranet. The next he was escorted out with no fanfare, no farewell. The board deleted his photos, Pierre pulled his quotes, and Marla spoke of stability, like she hadn't spent weeks smiling beside him. That's how this world works. They don't bury failures, they erase them. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Watching him walk out under the same silent stares I once endured was enough. The same lobby, the same glass doors, but this time the box in his hands wasn't filled with my notebooks. It was filled with his arrogance, packed tight and useless. The board tried to patch the hole with polished memos. Rhodes insisted the company was realigning for growth. The lenders stayed quiet, which told me everything. Quiet lenders are dangerous. It means they're still deciding how deep the knife goes. As for me, I walked away with what mattered. Proof that the truth, once preserved, doesn't need my voice to fight. It speaks in records, in logs, in signatures no one can fake. Jason thought 200 million made him powerful. He learned the hard way that numbers only have value when they're real. And here's the hard line you won't forget. Family may stab you in the back, but betrayal only hurts once. Exposure hurts forever. So tell me, when the person you raised turns your work into their throne, and then falls because of the same lies they thought would crown them, what lesson do you take from that? Drop it in the comments. I'll be reading. And remember, every story lives as long as it is remembered. A like is your mark on this story, and a subscription is your ticket to the next one.